What's up, y'all? Happy to be back. Somebody decided to take a vacation, so we missed a week, but we are back and ready to dive back into the beatitudes. So we got Matthew 5, verse 5, which says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." So we've gone through the poor in spirit and those who mourn, and we're now brought to light with the idea of the meek, and they will inherit the earth. It does make me think back to verse 3, which was the first one we talked about, which is the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so, like, they're inheriting the kingdom of heaven. Now we have the meek who will inherit the earth. Obviously, he's not referring to the inheritance of the earth as we see it now. It's the new earth. So when the new earth is here and we'll all be living on that, it's that idea. It's not necessarily that we are getting our own earths or anything crazy like that. But I also like it kind of in the present tense as well, because I do think God blesses us here on this earth as well. So we're going to kind of dive into that. But before we do, you got to kind of have an idea of the meek. So, Lenan, will you kind of go over meekness? So tell me a little bit about meekness. What do you know when it comes to meekness?
I think when I think of meekness, I think of patient. I think of yours says gentle.
Gentle.
And then you said that you think of it you think it's like a submissive thing. Like the submissive to God and his commandments will inherit the earth. And so there's two verses that I found that say that. This one is Galatians 5:1, and it says, For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to the yoke of slavery. And I like that because it says, do not submit to the yoke of slavery. So what is the yoke of slavery? I think everything that's in this world that's not of God is the yoke of slavery. You have your stress, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have hate, you have like all these things that have become because of the fall.
Right.
That's the yoke of slavery. That's what, I mean, and people will say like, oh, you'll feel better if you do this and all the things that the world does, but like you're putting yourself in bondage.
Right.
And so I like that one because you can even say that like, I like that idea of meek being submissive. You're submissive to God and his will. And it's something that you want to do.
Yeah.
I think that's different. It's not like a slave, like you're being forced to do it. I think meekness is a willingness and want to.
Yeah.
And then another one that I found was in James. James 4:7 says, Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So again, I think those are things that we can do to inherit the earth, is submit ourselves to God, be meek unto God, and flee the devil, and resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Right. Well, and I like two things to that, because first off, I think the submission thing is really cool, because like you go back to like Romans 12:2, and do not conform to the patterns of this world. It's like the same idea. And I like how both of those verses show two different sides of submission. So one is, conforming to the world, and so sin. So going back into the submitting to slavery, which would be sin. And obviously he's also referencing back in the day with Moses, when they all wanted to go back into Egypt for slavery because it was hard to be in the wilderness. And I think we all do that very badly, obviously, in our lives. But like more on the submissive side, it's you have two options. And I always liked the Gods at War from Kyle Idleman, like the idea that there's something on your altar at all times.
Yeah.
Like you never have this spare moment with an empty altar. Like you're never not worshiping something. Like you're submitting to something no matter what. And just the realization of like, what are you submitting to? Are you submitting to God, or are you submitting to the world or the devil? And I also find it interesting because how that verse says, resist him and he will flee. Because I feel like when I look at meekness, when I first think of meekness, and when I used to read it when I was a kid, it was like the idea of this like soft-spoken, almost weak in a lot of way, like meek, and obviously weak and meek sound the same, so of course you put those together. But I do think meekness is often attributed it, or like if you look at the NASB, which I have, the gentle, and it's like the gentle or the meek sounds weak, like it doesn't sound strong. And the realization that you resist the devil, you don't run from the devil. Like we can resist the devil through Jesus. And I think that's a big point that I think we forget as Christians, because I think it's like in our head. Yeah, like I think in our head it's like run away, get away from all the bad. Like there is, like I think we lose the idea of resistance because we put ourselves not in meekness, we put ourselves in weakness. And I see those two as very different. And so how I see meekness is it's this idea of when we are aligning ourselves with Christ, it actually makes us stronger. So Madison sent me this verse the other day, and it's funny because I think it actually pairs up really well. It's Acts 4:13, which says, now as they observed the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. And so this is talking about these two uneducated, clearly uneducated men, just normal people, and they had no training, but their confidence showed that they had been with Jesus. Like it was their confidence in the way that the boldness that they had. And I love it because in John, it talks about when Jesus was speaking, he spoke with authority, and they recognized him as somebody who spoke with authority. Like we're not called to be meek. I mean, we're not called to be weak, excuse me. We're called to be meek, which is submissive, because it was like the idea of Jesus wasn't necessarily meek. He was gentle for sure. So I think maybe that's why some of these translations do gentle, because it's like be like Jesus. But I think in my head, I'm not supposed to be Jesus to a certain extent. Like I have to follow him because he is greater than me. He will always be greater than me. So there's certain things like meekness to where I don't think like Jesus didn't have to be meek to us. Like he was a different type of meek because he wasn't submissive to us. Now he was submissive to the Father though. And I think that's cool because which is too much theology if we're trying to get into Trinity of him being submissive to the Father, but I think that is cool.
I think I like gentle because I would say that Jesus was meek. He was very gentle in the way that he interacted with people.
Right.
And the way that he, I mean, even in his calling out and saying, you are a brood of vipers, like, he wasn't, I think, okay, so I've been doing this study on emotions that Jenny Allen has put out, which I really loved. But saying how, like, in his anger, like, we are allowed to feel anger. We're allowed to feel those strong emotions, but we can't sin in them. And so I think being meek, Jesus displayed that perfectly, because even when he was frustrated and angry at the Pharisees and, like, the people that he called brood of vipers, and when he flipped the tables, like, it was all out of a holy righteousness that, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here. Like, he hated what they were doing. He didn't hate them. So there was a gentleness about him that I think that we can portray.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think Jesus was meek because
that's a good point.
He was gentle.
Yeah.
He approached every situation with the bigger picture in mind and the kingdom picture in mind, and he approached it with gentleness and patience. And so I think that that's what he's calling us to do, is approach every situation, because we're here on earth. They will inherit the earth. That we need to approach every situation and treat every person with gentleness and patience and grace, because I feel like our natural instinct is to go opposite of that.
Right.
We want to hit everybody with our words. We want to be harsh. We want to tell them exactly what we think.
Right.
And that's not how you inherit the earth. That's not how you take good possession of what God has given you.
So I like that. I think you're right. It's like he was really truly meek, and then he did also submit to the Father, so it's different. Obviously, it looks different for us as his followers, but no, I agree. It's a good point that he was meek and gentle at the same time. And then I also want to talk a little bit about like the inheriting the earth, like, because in my head, I see that as two things. So we'll be saved, and so we will, like, just like the first verse, you know, the like verse 3, it's the kingdom of heaven. Like, we will get to heaven, we will be able to be a part of the new earth when it comes around. but like more on the now. Like, what does it look like to inherit earth now to you? I didn't prepare you for that question.
No. To inherit the earth, I think it's to do good at what God has given you and in the spaces God has given you. I think, I don't know, I think the first thing I think of is like to go and make disciples. So you inherit the earth, you bring more people to Christ in a meekness and into a submission to what God wants for their life. And I also think of the verse that says that they will know us by our love. Like, that's inheriting the earth.
Right.
That's, I kind of think of like takeover as like inheritance.
Right.
So like for me, taking over would be they will know us by our love. Like, that's how we will take over. And so that's what I think of. I don't know if that's the right answer or not.
I'm
that's
necessarily
what I
looking
think
for the right
of.
answer. I was like, I think for me, it's like, I feel like we want to have like these riches and like you want to have the picture perfect life or like the worldly good life on earth. And I think one of the things ministry wise that I've realized when it comes to inheriting the earth, that so like tonight, like getting to do ministry again tonight and knowing that I get to go talk to them again next week, like there's just this realization of that's the inheritance I'm looking for, is to just do the works of God and give glory to God while I'm on earth. Like, to me, that's me inheriting the earth. So I don't think you gave a wrong answer by any means. I actually really like that. Did you have anything else that stood out to you at all?
Nope.
I think it's funny because I do think you're a great representation of how meekness is not weakness. Ooh, that'd be a good slogan.
Good sermon.
Put that on
That'll
a church.
preach.
That'll preach. Yeah, I like meekness is not weakness. But I want to encourage you guys. Like, that's what we're called to. As like this life is confusing and chaotic, and there are times where you do have to be strong. Like, you have to have confidence all the time. As like really the strength that we have is a lot more unseen. But there are going to be times where you need to show that strength to others. But with that, also be gentle and love in the same way that you correct. You have to also be able to show love and give kindness to those times as well. But we love you guys. I hope that this was able to just stir you to, continue to do good and give God glory throughout your life. So I'm hoping that this is encouraging you guys to get out and do things boldly. Tonight we actually got to watch one of the 8th graders from our church give a sermon. He's 12 years old. It's super, super cool. So he's not even 8th grade. He's like 7th grade. So it was super awesome to see a 12-year-old just get up and be brave. And honestly, what's so cool is it doesn't matter how old he is. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's like the whole point is we are doing God's work no matter the age, no matter the background, no matter who we are, what we do. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I hope you guys have been all doing well. If you have any prayer requests, please let us know. But we love you all. Our so for this week is probably going to be Set Me on Fire. Set Me on Fire by Benjamin William Hastings. Did I do that one last week?
I think you've done it recently.
Never mind. We're going to do Adonai. Who is it by? I can't remember who it was by. Lizzie played us a song tonight. It's called Adonai. It was a super cool song. Can't remember who sang it, but I'll post it in the group me for y'all. And so if you have any questions, please let us know. But we love you all. And if there's anything we can do, anything we can be praying for, let us know. We're always here. But we love you guys. Hope God continues to move in your life. And we will see you next week. Deuces.